Hi there. In this video, we'll be showing you how to integrate RazorPay orders and payments API in a web application using Java on the backend and ReactJS on the front end. The first step is to create a RazorPay account. Head over to the RazorPay website and sign up for an account. Verify your mobile number by entering the OTP. Select your business type. Fill in the required fields such as your name and click Next. Once you have an account, you can get your API keys that you'll need to use the RazorPay API. After you sign up for a RazorPay account, you will be redirected to the RazorPay dashboard. RazorPay provides two modes of operation for your account, test mode and live mode. Click on the drop-down list and select the mode you want to work with, either test mode or live mode. Test mode is a feature that allows you to test your integration with the RazorPay payment gateway without actually processing any real transactions. Once you have chosen the mode, test mode or live mode in RazorPay, you can generate the API keys. From the dashboard, click on the Account and Settings option on the left side of the screen. Under Website and App Settings, click API Keys. Click on Generate Test Key. You'll see two API keys, Key ID and Key Secret. Click on the Download button to download them to your system. Next, we need to set up the backend. In your Java backend, you can use the RazorPay Java SDK to create an order. The SDK will generate an order ID that you can use on the front end to initiate payment. This method createOrder creates a new order using the RazorPay payment gateway. The method takes two parameters, amount and currency, which represents the total amount of the order and the currency in which payment will be made. If the order creation is successful, the method returns a response entity object containing the ID of the newly created order. Next, I have created a GET HTTP request API to fetch tariff details like amount and currency. This API calls the createOrder method, passing in the extracted amount and currency values. The createOrder method is expected to return an instance of the response entity class, which contains information about the HTTP response that was sent from the server like order ID, amount, and currency. Now, we need to display payment options on the front end. In your VS Code, run the command npm install React RazorPay in the terminal to install the React RazorPay package and its dependencies. Once the installation is complete, you can import and use the React RazorPay components in your React application to integrate with RazorPay's payment gateway. Next, create an index.html file. The script tag included in the HTML file is used to load an external JavaScript file. In this case, it's loading the checkout.js file from RazorPay's server. The checkout.js file provides the necessary code to create and display a payment form for RazorPay. This code defines a functional component called RazorPay Payment Button, which is a payment button implementation using the RazorPay Payment Gateway. This component is built using the React Framework, Axios library, and React Rotterdam library. The component contains a state that manages the order ID and RZ payment ID variables. It also contains an asynchronous function called handleClick that is called when the pay button is clicked. The handleClick function makes an HTTP GET request to fetch the order details from a specified URL using the Axios library. The response data is then extracted and used to configure the RazorPay payment gateway. The options object is defined next, which is used to configure the payment gateway. This object contains information such as the payment amount, currency, key, and other payment related details. The payment is then processed when the user clicks the pay button, which creates an instance of RazorPay and opens the payment dialog box. On line 49, a new instance of the RazorPay payment gateway is created by passing the configuration options that were defined earlier. The window.razorpay object is provided by the RazorPay API, and calling its constructor with the options object creates a new instance of the payment gateway. This instance is used to process the payment when the user clicks the pay button. The open method is used to display the payment gateway pop-up window for the user to make the payment. The handle payment success function is defined to handle the response data when the payment is successful. The return statement specifies the JSX code to be displayed on the web page. A button element with an ID is rendered, and when the user clicks it, the handleClick function is called. Additionally, a link is displayed that navigates to the timer route and displays the RZ payment ID state variable as text. Finally, The RazorPay payment button component is exported for use in other parts of the application. Once the user completes the payment on the front end, we need to capture the payment on the back end. This is a Java class called payment, which represents a payment made by a user. It has fields like payment ID, other payment ID, user ID, amount, payment status, order ID, and timestamp. These fields are used to store information related to the payment in the database. This Java method is used to handle an HTTP POST request to the safe payment endpoint. It allows cross-origin requests so that it can be accessed from different domains. The method expects the client to send a JSON object representing a payment as the request body, which is deserialized using the request body annotation. This is the RazorPay payment flow, how frontend and backend work together to process payments. The user selects a product on the front end and clicks on the Pay button. The frontend sends a request to the backend to create an order using the RazorPay Orders API. The request includes the amount of the payment and any other relevant information about the order. The backend generates a new order using the RazorPay Orders API and returns the ID to the frontend. The frontend initializes the RazorPay payment gateway with the order ID and other relevant information. The user completes the payment process using the RazorPay payment gateway. Once the payment is successful, the RazorPay payment gateway sends a response to the backend indicating that the payment was successful. The backend can then save the payment details, example payment ID, order ID, payment amount, etc. to the database and perform any other relevant actions, example send a confirmation email to the user. The frontend can then display a confirmation message or redirect the user to a success page depending on the outcome of the payment. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this video helpful in understanding how RazorPay payments and orders API work with both front-end and back-end technologies.